Most people assumed the buzz would die down by the end of the week, that the excitement over a janitor speaking 9 languages would fade into office legend, something whispered about in hallways, then forgotten. But they were wrong. Because what the CEO did next didn't just leave people talking. It changed the rhythm of Halberg International from the inside out. It all started again on a quiet Wednesday morning. Denise Atwater stepped into the 12th floor lobby not in her janitor's uniform, but in a navy blue blouse and slacks that still felt foreign against her skin. A new badge hung around her neck, Cultural Liaison, International Affairs. The title felt heavier than it looked. The night before, she had stood in front of the mirror for over an hour, adjusting her collar, second-guessing everything. Not the job itself. She knew she could do that. But the way people looked at her now, it wasn't the same. Some eyes carried curiosity, some disbelief. A few barely masked resentment. She kept her head up anyway. As she walked past the familiar break room, she heard the whisper before she saw the person. That's her. It was a young voice. An intern, maybe. She's the janitor who speaks 9 languages. Denise gave a polite nod and kept walking. She wasn't mad. She understood. People had never seen a story like hers before. Not in this building, not in that uniform. But that didn't mean they were ready to accept it. Upstairs, Jonathan Kellerman, the CEO who had pulled her into his office just days before, was preparing for something much bigger than a job title change. He knew Denise's story had opened a door, but he also knew it had opened eyes, and not all of them were friendly. Some of his board members had called his decision unconventional. Others labeled it risky. He didn't care. He'd seen more initiative in her in one morning than he had from some directors in a year. And besides, he had a plan. But before anything official could begin, there was a test. One Kellerman didn't plan, and one Denise couldn't avoid. A team from the company's Paris office was scheduled to arrive for a surprise audit and review. Their translator missed the flight. The timing couldn't have been worse. Kellerman called Denise into his office. They're already in the lobby, he said, checking his watch. Think you can handle it? She raised an eyebrow. In French? He smiled. I know you can. Denise stepped into the main conference room 10 minutes later. 3 French executives sat flipping through documents, clearly unimpressed. One of them glanced up with a look that said he expected a consultant in heels and a clipboard. Instead, he got Denise, calm, composed, and fluent. The moment she introduced herself in perfect Parisian French, the entire energy shifted. Tension turned into interest. The meeting that could have collapsed turned into one of the smoothest sessions they'd had all quarter. She didn't just translate, she connected, understood the nuances, caught the sarcasm, eased the small cultural bumps that often went unnoticed but made all the difference in big deals. Outside the glass walls of the room, people had stopped pretending not to watch. Word had spread again. This time faster. By noon, someone from finance whispered, she saved the audit. Another chimed in. Kellerman's bet might have just paid off. But for Denise, it wasn't a bet. It was survival. Every moment in that room, every sentence she translated, every pause she filled, it all carried weight. It was her chance to prove not just her skill but her place. Later that afternoon, Kellerman called her back. I owe you, he said simply. She shook her head. No, you gave me the shot, I just didn't waste it. But even as their partnership grew stronger, not everyone saw it that way. Down on the 6th floor in a sleek corner office, an email was being typed, short, pointed, and laced with just enough concern to seem professional. The subject line read, Internal Promotion Review Request. No name was signed, but the message was clear. Someone wanted her gone. That email reached Eleanor Craig by 5 p.m., a senior board member with a sharp eye for protocol and a sharper reputation for upholding tradition. She didn't dislike Denise. She just didn't like surprises. A meeting was quietly scheduled. Meanwhile, Denise continued to do what she did best. Show up, listen, translate, and solve. One day, It was a shipment error with a German vendor. The next, a tense Zoom call with Dubai over contract terms. She handled each one with patience and precision, but the pressure was building. And then came Friday. She found the note taped to her door. It wasn't handwritten, just typed on plain white paper. Some people clean floors, others clean up their act. Know your lane. No signature. No clue who sent it. But the message was loud and clear. Denise stared at it for a moment before folding it neatly and placing it in her desk drawer. She didn't say a word. She just closed the drawer and opened her laptop. Later that evening, as the building emptied out and office lights dimmed, Kellerman found her still at her desk. "You okay?" he asked, stepping inside. She nodded. "I'm used to it." He looked at her for a long moment. "You shouldn't have to be." But Denise didn't need sympathy. She needed time. And just as she was about to pack up, her inbox pinged. Subject: Board inquiry, internal role evaluation. It had begun. The next chapter in her story wouldn't be about languages or titles. It would be about proving she belonged, again. This time not just in the job but in the eyes of those who still refused to believe she ever should have left the night shift. And somewhere behind those emails and meetings, someone was watching, waiting to push harder, because not everyone wanted to see her rise. But Denise Atwater had already decided. If she was going to stand in this room, she was going to own every step of the floor she walked on. What happened next? That's where the real test begins. The board inquiry didn't hit all at once. It started as a whisper, an extra question during a meeting, a longer glance at her reports, an invitation to a sit-down with Eleanor Craig. But Denise could feel it building. Pressure doesn't always come as shouting or slams. Sometimes it's silence that grows heavier by the day. The Monday following that email, she arrived early. Her office was quiet, the hallways still dim. She made coffee and sat at her desk, watching the sun push through the glass. Then her calendar pinged. Meeting with Eleanor Craig, 9 a.m. No subject. No notes. Denise stood up, smoothed the front of her blazer, and walked to the elevator. On the way up, she caught her reflection in the chrome wall. She didn't look like a janitor anymore, but she still felt like one, at least in their eyes. On the 17th floor, Eleanor's assistant led her in without much greeting. Eleanor sat at a long glass table, a leather folder in front of her, her expression unreadable. "Please sit." Denise obeyed. "I've reviewed the complaints," Eleanor began. "You've made some people uncomfortable." Denise tilted, her head. "By doing my job?" Eleanor didn't blink. "By doing it too well, too quickly. That kind of leap tends to rattle people, especially those still climbing the traditional ladder." Denise folded her hands calmly. "I didn't ask for a shortcut. I've been here 13 years. Nobody saw me until I opened my mouth in Mandarin. A flicker of something. Respect, maybe, crossed Eleanor's face. That may be true, but perception matters here. And the board wants a report, something to justify your position beyond a personal recommendation." Denise nodded slowly. "So they want proof I belong?" "Yes." "I've been giving that proof every day." Eleanor leaned back. "You'll need to give more." By the time Denise left the office, her chest felt tight. Not fear, just that heavy knowing. That weight women like her carry when they walk into rooms they were never invited to, only to be asked to explain how they got there. That same day she worked harder. She stayed later. She redrafted 3 vendor contracts, caught a clause in a Japanese document that saved the company thousands, and even stepped in to calm a tense call with the Nairobi office. When she finally left the building, the sky was already dark. But her name was still echoing in Slack messages and closed-door chats. Downstairs, Ron, her old custodial supervisor, waited near the entrance. "Hey," he said with a smile. "Place ain't been the same without you on the floors." She smiled back. "It's been strange not carrying a mop." "You hear the rumors?" he asked gently. Some folks saying this thing's temporary, that you'll be back on night shift by next month. Denise paused. I'm not going back, Ron. He nodded. I know. But you still gotta prove it. To them. The next few days came fast. Kellerman called her in for updates. HR asked for documentation on everything she'd worked on. 2 board members requested a presentation on her impact. And a few old faces, the ones who never said hello when she was cleaning their offices, suddenly wanted to sit down for a quick chat. But there was one person who stayed quiet. Victor, the same man who dropped a pile of reports on her desk and walked out without waiting for a thank you. Now he was watching. Not openly, but his name kept popping up, on emails, in forwarded threads, in quiet pushback. Then, during a team sync on Thursday, he spoke up. I think we need a dedicated language consultant for our global ops, he said, eyes pointedly avoiding hers. Someone certified, someone trained. Denise didn't speak. She didn't have to. Kellerman looked over at her, then back at Victor. We already have one. Not officially. The room went quiet. That night, Denise sat in her office long. After everyone left, her daughter called, voice full of concern. You okay, Ma? I'm fine, baby, just tired. You want me to come down there and remind them who you are? Denise smiled. No, I need to remind myself. After they hung up, she opened her drawer and pulled out the note she'd been keeping. Know your lane. She unfolded it, read it one more time, then quietly tore it in half. Friday morning arrived with the kind of tension that wraps itself around everything. The board meeting was scheduled for noon. Denise would present her report, what she'd done, what she was building, and why it mattered. At 11:45, she stood outside the conference room. Kellerman approached her. You ready? As I'll ever be. He opened the door. Inside, the board sat waiting. Eleanor at the head, Victor by the glass, a few unfamiliar faces tapping tablets. Denise walked to the front, placed her notes on the table, and looked up. She didn't start with numbers, she started with a photo. It was her janitor ID badge projected behind her. This was me, she said. Not long ago. She moved through her slides. Language support metrics, vendor savings, improved communication response times. Then she told a story about a partner in São Paulo who'd emailed her in Portuguese after a call, just to say, thank you for speaking my language. It made me feel seen. Her voice never shook. Her eyes never dropped. She ended with a simple line. I don't need a degree to be valuable. I've already proven that. What I need is a fair shot to keep building what I've started. There was silence when she finished. Then, Eleanor slowly closed her folder. We'll be in touch. Denise nodded and walked out. In the hallway, she finally let herself breathe. She didn't know what they'd decide, but she knew one thing. This time, she didn't wait for someone to see her worth. She showed it, and that changes everything. The board's silence lasted longer than Denise expected. 1 day passed, then 2. By Monday morning, no email, no call, no update from Kellerman either. Just waiting. Each hour felt heavier, like walking through fog. But she kept showing up. She didn't slow down. If anything, she worked harder, following up with overseas partners, fixing translation issues, helping a new hire from Morocco adjust to the company's workflow. She smiled when spoken to, nodded in meetings, but inside she was bracing for whatever came next. Then on Wednesday morning, everything changed. Denise stepped into the building like usual, head high, heart steady. As she reached the elevator, her badge didn't work. The red light blinked. She tried again. Nothing. Her breath caught for just a second, then someone behind her cleared their throat. Ms. Atwater? She turned. It was Kellerman. Come with me, he said. She followed him, not to her floor, but to the top, floor 20, the executive level, reserved for the highest leadership. She'd only been there once, and even then she hadn't made it past the waiting area. He opened the glass doors, held them for her. Inside, the entire board sat at the long table. Eleanor was there. Victor, too. Kellerman looked at Denise and nodded toward the head of the table. Sit. She didn't hesitate. She took the seat. The one people like her were never supposed to sit in. Eleanor spoke first. We've reviewed your impact report, your performance, the testimonials from international clients, your cost-saving efforts, your leadership. She paused. And we've reached a decision. The room was still. Denise held her breath. You're not just staying in your position, Eleanor said. We're expanding it. Denise blinked. Kellerman picked up from there. Effective. Immediately you'll lead the new Global Communications Integration Department. You'll have a team, a budget. You'll report directly to me. Denise stared at them. Is this real? Victor leaned forward. You've earned it. Even I can't argue that anymore. Denise felt her throat tighten. She looked down for a second, then back up. Thank you, she said quietly. Eleanor gave a nod, not cold this time, but solid, like a door finally unlocking. When Denise left that room, she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just smiled, a calm, quiet smile. The kind that only comes when you've carried the weight long enough to know it's finally being lifted. Words spread fast. This time, people didn't whisper. They clapped. The staff lounge had a buzz. Someone brought cupcakes. Even Ron from Custodial stopped by her office with a grin. Told you they'd see it one day, he said. Her new office was bigger, brighter. It had a corner view of the city. On the wall, she placed something simple, her old janitor's badge, framed, not as a reminder of where she came from, but of what she carried through it. A week later, she gave her first talk as head of the new department. It wasn't about the past. It was about what came next, about building bridges, breaking silos, and listening better. She finished with a line that stayed with everyone who heard it. You don't need a fancy title to speak up. You just need someone to hear you. And if no one listens, keep speaking. One day they will. After the applause, a young intern named Bao approached her. My mom's a hotel cleaner, he said. She speaks 5 languages too. I used to feel embarrassed about that. Not anymore. Denise touched his shoulder. You tell her she's brilliant, she said. That moment became the true climax, not the boardroom victory, not the title, not the office, but the ripple effect. Because her story didn't just open doors for herself. It unlocked something in others, people who had been overlooked, underestimated, or silenced. Months passed. The company culture began to shift. The Voice Inside program grew. More internal staff signed up. A receptionist fluent in Urdu was promoted to customer engagement. A cafeteria worker who spoke Thai helped negotiate a supplier contract. The whole company began to look and sound different. Denise didn't chase credit. She just kept showing up, speaking up, and lifting others the way no one lifted her. One quiet Friday, Kellerman visited her office. You ever think about being a board member one day? He asked. She chuckled. One step at a time. He smiled. Just keep walking. You're already leading. As the sun dipped behind the city skyline, Denise stood by her window, watching the light fade and the office towers glow. She thought about her daughter, her parents, the long nights, the quiet mornings with mop in hand and dreams too big to say out loud. Now she didn't have to whisper. She was seen. She was heard. She belonged, and that was enough. The story ends here, but its message stays with us. Don't judge someone by their uniform, their title, or where they start. Greatness speaks many languages, you just have to be willing to listen.